You know what? Let's do Alan Greenspan here while we're doing a little bit of politics, because he talks about politics as well. He wrote a new book called The Age of Turbulence, Adventures in a New World. And he's got some doozies in there. One of them is something we alluded to in the last hour. He said, oh, by the way, the Iraq War was totally for oil. Totally for oil. And he's like, yeah, the politicians won't admit it because it's political, and you can't say, hey, we invaded the country for oil. But let's get real. We were worried about what Saddam Hussein was going to do, in that area when there's so much oil in that area. And, Alan Greenspan, independent, when he was the head of the Federal Reserve, if you don't remember, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It's an immensely important position. Of course, he controlled a lot of the fiscal policy for the United States, really, and for a lot of the world, too, by extension. And at the time, independent Alan Greenspan says this and this. And then in the book I read, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm a lifelong Republican. So when he was criticizing the Democrats, how come we never heard about how he was a lifelong Republican? Now, some people might say, oh, no, that was always on the record. On the record, my ass. I remember having debates about Alan Greenspan and how he was hitting below the belt and criticizing Democrats in a way that didn't make any sense. And people were like, no, Alan Greenspan's the most independent, nonpartisan person ever. So he writes his $8 million book, and he's like, oh, yeah, of course, I was always a Republican. Oh, okay. Now we know. And so he says, yeah, the Bush administration did this thing for oil, and, of course, the Bush administration has come back fighting hard, saying, no, Alan Greenspan doesn't know what he's talking about. We did it for the weapons of mass destruction. Come on. Okay. Now, but the second part I found interesting is he says he's, like Lincoln Chafee, he's disillusioned with the Republican Party. Quote, Republicans in Congress swapped principle for power, and they ended up with neither. They deserve to lose. Oh, damn. No, you didn't. Okay. But it's kind of a powerful message there, and I think he stated it rather eloquently, if I must say so. They swapped principle for power, they ended up with neither, and they deserve to lose. It's true. They thought, you know what? Now, principally, we shouldn't spend so much in all the pork barrel projects. We talked about fiscal discipline and responsibility, and we shouldn't do all of these tax cuts, some of which are for completely political reasons. But I love our power. We got to keep the power. Okay, you take this, everybody keep their seats. Yeah. And then, of course, people realized that they had no principles, and then they lost partly because of that, and then they didn't have any power either. So Greenspan nails it on that. Here's the part that I actually found the most interesting out of all the Greenspan material. He said that, he was part of the Ford administration, too, the Gerald Ford administration. He was on the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. And at the time, there was Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld, of course, in the Ford administration, too. And he said when the Bush administration started, he felt like it was like a reunion. And he's like, oh, this is great. Oh, this Republicans, I love them. And they were going to do a cute little reunion of the Ford administration. But he said that he soon discovered, and this is from the Wall Street Journal, that in the Bush White House, the political operation was far more dominant than in the Fords. And so in Ford administration, they cared more about policy. In the Bush administration, politics was dominant. And he said, quote, little value was placed on rigorous economic policy debate or the weighing of long-term consequences. So basically what he's saying there is they didn't give a damn what the consequences were. They didn't give a damn about economic policy or how it was going to affect the country. The only thing they cared about was politics. How can we win more seats? How could we win re-election? So let's do our economic policy, not based on what's good for the country, but based on what's good for our political gain. And even lifelong Alan Greenspan, who was looking forward to the reunion of the Ford administration, in the end realized, wow, these are bad guys, and they deserve to lose.